Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't know this was going to be that hard. Veto, as a previous speaker, is something of a challenge. Dear Vito, I enjoyed very much. I had a translator, and that helped me a lot to understand, in particular, the statement that you are from South Italy, and for that reason you don't speak much and not fast at all. I really need to hear that, because otherwise I would have had the wrong impression, to calibrate that. And by the way, the Germans are good at technology, believe me. The secret is, let them do their thing. Don't press the button all the time and they get confused. Marcus, and this is to you, next time when Vito speaks, we deactivate the buttons. We can do that remotely, so technology can help. We just deactivate it, he can press whatever he wants, and we just advance the way we like it. And by the way, the World Cup is not over yet, so please be gentle with the Germans. Now, human-centric intelligent society, what a challenge. I could just say that I agree with everything that Vito said. I could also say that, well, disagree with everything he said. That would be more interesting, but would be more difficult to prove. So let me start out like this. If we want to talk about how the world is changing, and we saw a lot of that, so I can make that somewhat shorter now. If we talk about this part one, how the world is changing, the short version of it is it's becoming a bit more intelligent, and it's becoming a bit more smart. And how this being smart and intelligent comes about, I'm not trying to mimic you coming down. I always come down. And in order to better you a little bit there, Rita, I'll walk into the audience, okay? That's one step further, okay? So if we wanted to find out how the world will become smart, we need to ask this: what is smart? And how does it come about? And one way of finding out would be to crack up the head of some smart person and look inside. And what we see is a brain, and we see brain cells, and these are important, but the most important part of it is the connections between the brain cells, the synapses, as they are called. In fact, when babies are born and they grow up, what they do in the first year, actually more than a year, they try to connect the different parts of the brain, wire the brain. This is why they need to sleep so much, because they need resting phases because of this hard work of connecting. But the point in case is that it's connections. So for the argument of this event here, I would say that the future will be smart because it's connected. In fact, it's not just connected. The World Economic Forum in Davos said it's a hyper-connected world. Now, technically speaking, hyper-connected doesn't exist. Something is either connected or not connected. If it's connected, then it's fully connected, and we are done. But hyper-connected sounds a little bit better, and I understand that the people who use this word were using it to express that it's not just that objects will be connected, it's not just people will be connected, but also business processes will be connected, and therefore there's maybe a new situation, a new world in which we just not just have to rebuild the technology foundation. We are used to that. We've been rebuilding the technology foundation of mankind, if I may use big words, a number of times by now, but we will have to rebuild the business as well. And the one thing about the connections is what is called Metcalfe's law. Bob Metcalfe was the guy who invented the Ethernet, and that law is not as known as Moore's law, which says every 2 years we double the capacity of the electronics that we build. Metcalfe's law says, well, there are several versions of it. It says that the usefulness of a network is going up as a square of the number of components in the network. Well, actually, the complexity of the network is going up like that, too. And it's sort of an obvious observation, because if you have a network and everybody connect to everybody, that's n squared connections, because everybody to everybody, n times n. I'm making small mistakes that can be neglected for large n. So in that situation, n squared. Now, I understand that there aren't going to be 50 billion. I understand that it's going to be 200 billion. Thank you, Vito, for that. In fact, it doesn't ruin my argument, it helps. Because if it was 50 billion from the current 10 or 12 maybe, so that's a factor of 4, but since it's going up as the square number of components, it's going to be not 4 times, it's going to be 16 times as useful as it is today. And if it's 200, that's another 4, and therefore the square of that is another 16. So it's not just 1 order of magnitude. By the end of the decade, quite possibly 2 orders of magnitude. It's going to be 2 orders, about 100 times more complex, but also more useful. And that is something that will prove us right. These exponentials in the development of IT always prove us right. The futurologists have a somewhat easier life because if they are not right today, they're going to be right tomorrow about the same aspect because it's going up like that. So a little bit of delay maybe, but we are getting to those levels. The case in point is that this whole new emerging world is due to the complexity and usefulness of networks and the connectedness of things. And this is what we call the connected world or the hyper-connected world. And these connections enable us to exchange data. And these connections produce a lot of data that can be analyzed. That's done by the methods and the disciplines of big data that Vito talked about. You see, I'm someone who believes that data are not necessarily useful. We've got to collect data because it's one way of finding out about the future, understanding the past. There are other ways about finding out about the future, and I will mention them. And strictly speaking, you know, these huge masses of data that we produce and the total data set of mankind, you know, these exabytes and zettabytes now, strictly speaking, not necessarily information. There are, in the first place, data. Because most of what we have, and Vito alluded to this, most of what we have is actually video material on YouTube. That's the biggest part of the data of mankind. Now, I don't think you're going to argue with me today that that's all information that's out there on YouTube. I would argue that let's just settle for data for a while, and then we will see that not every piece of data can be turned into useful information, or at least if we are not smart about it. So I'll also talk about this, you know, how to be able to contribute using that kind of data for that development. One big aspect and consequence is that with that kind of massive amounts of data and the infrastructure that is being built to acquire that data, these are the sensors, to store that data, these are the storage systems, to transmit that data, these are the networks that we are using, and analyze that data, and these are the computers and the supercomputers that we are using to understand the content of the data by using proper mathematical modeling. With that together, and that infrastructure is being created. That's been being created by the information technology and communication ICT companies of this world. The good news for you as a customer is that that infrastructure is there and can be had for very little money. Because in the last revolution or evolution, whatever you would like to call it, with the onset of the internet and cloud computing, the information technology industry has created infrastructure that can be had for very little money now. And whereas a number of years ago, to found the business and build up some basic infrastructure to run it did cost a couple of million, it's now through several steps as depicted on the chart. It's down now to a couple of thousand euros or dollars only to start a business. So the threshold and the barrier of entry, as they call it, has become very small now. Literally, you can set up a business using a credit card. Now, this used to be true in the past as well. There are legendary Silicon Valley companies that have been set up and founded using a credit card. But that credit card was an American Express Gold card with the credit limit of $100,000. You don't need that anymore. You can take your stock bank credit card and start to run a business on it, because there are not much of a capex, capital expenditure, that you get to spend in the beginning. You can use it as a service. So not just products, lots of other things and aspects of life and processes are being turned into a service, and therefore everyone can start a digital business now. Of course, starting a digital business is not exactly, well, it is exciting, I suppose, and I would like to, I don't want to sound negative about it, but I just happen to think that what can be digitized easily is either already digitized or is in the process of being digitized now. We don't really need, a futurologist doesn't have to spend time about thinking how to do that, because that's a done deal, I would say. So music is digital, video is digital, books are digital, lots of other things are digital now, payment systems, everything, lots of things that were easy to digitize have become digital. What we will see in the rest of this decade, by the end of this decade, we will see something very different happening. We will see that this digitalization or digitization, whatever word you would like to use, will penetrate the old world, the analog world. And the analog world is sort of dear to our heart. The analog world is the one that we live in, to start with. These are our buildings, these are our bridges, the roads, the railroads, everything that we built as mankind. And we are, with some justification, quite proud of what we have built. But the problem is that infrastructure of mankind on this planet Earth is currently, by and large, analog. The expensive part of it is. And what you will see is that the digitalization will take over that part of the world as well. It's not because we will be rebuilding everything. We don't have the money and we don't have the time to rebuild everything. But what will happen is that we will just inject just enough intelligence and just enough smartness into these analog objects of the analog world to enable us to use them in somewhat a better way. You see, take one example. In Germany, more than 70% of all the bridges need attention, repair, maintenance. Well, there are obvious reasons for that. Most of them have been built, 50, 60 years ago for known reasons, and they are now getting of age. And if just someone could tell the authorities who are concerned with them in what sequence they need to visit those bridges and do the maintenance work, would be worth billions. Because obviously, there are so many of them that they need attention that they can't do it all at once. So some information about where is it urgent, where you need to do it immediately, which other ones you got to shut down because they're dangerous, would be worth billions. And that's an important thing, that this digital penetration of the analog world is an enormous opportunity. If we could just shave off 1% of the maintenance cost of the analog infrastructure of mankind, that would amount to something like 15 to 16 trillion US dollars, which is about the GDP of the United States or the European Union. So we are talking a lot of money here that one can do with the old analog world. And that analog world will be partially, at least the new parts of it, will be eliminated. We can't close our eyes. What's happening is a dematerialization. Certain things that used to be objects disappear. This is what Vito talked about when he said that products will be converted into services. And this is happening, and this is tearing apart value chains, and manufacturing is not the same. We mentioned that. And if you think that this 3D printing that has been quoted so many times in so many presentations is a joke, think about it twice, or come back next year and you will see that it isn't. because it will destroy traditional value chains just by the sheer fact that certain things, simple things in the beginning, we will be able to print them on site and using cheap equipment, downloading the instructions from the internet. And what this does, you look at them, well, who cares? That's probably just a small business. But it does destroy entire value chains that exist today, because part of the value creation and the part of the income of companies who manufacture products relies on the fact that you are going to be needing spare parts of some kind, and the spare parts are typically very expensive because small pieces need to get to places and you have to buy them. So if you think about it, how much you pay for a spare part and how much you paid for the product, you are shocked. And that is good for the manufacturers. It's a nice situation because that's an additional revenue stream. Now, that revenue stream is going to go away. And if you continue this idea, you will realize that with this Internet of Things and remote control and automation, what we can get is a situation where maintenance is not a big part of the value chain anymore. And look into the books of companies and you will find that they are getting something like 20% of their revenue, even in the software industry where the marginal costs are now zero. Nevertheless, 20% or some thing like that, that proportion of the total income is related to maintenance services. So not just the digital part, the physical part will be affected as well. And this is why it is justified, I would say, to say the words that Vito was saying, that we are facing a new industrial revolution of some kind. The difference is that this one's going to be much quicker than the previous ones, and it's going to be ramping up as we speak very quickly, because it's rather easy to marry traditional machine manufacturing with Internet of Things, actuators, sensors of all kinds, if the infrastructure around it that can make use of that deployment is available. But I'd just argue that it is available because cloud computing has created that infrastructure, essentially, and therefore it will be easy to create that. Now, that's something important to understand. This is important to understand everywhere in the world, but I would argue that this is vital for us to understand in traditional countries of the old world, such as Germany or Italy, where the manufacturing of traditional goods is important, because I don't want to spend time to argue whether we missed the IT revolution as Europeans or have any contributions to it or had during the recent decade. That's not important anymore. The important question is looking forward. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? And what's going to happen in the next 10 years is that IT and communication technologies penetrate traditional analog manufacturing and products and the infrastructure of mankind. And because of that, if we in Europe are not on top of this development, then we can kiss goodbye the traditional industries as well. And then you tell me what we do, because I don't know. That's the significance of it. And the first industrial revolution with the mass manufacturing and the steam engine, it took almost a century. The second one, with the electricity at the end of the 19th century, took 30 years. And the third one, which was the beginning of the 60s of the past century, 1960s, it took less than 10 years to get to numerical control and automation and manufacturing. And now the Internet of Things and the Industrial Revolution, the Germans like to call it Industry 4.0. That's the expression that is being used in Germany. With that, we are probably talking about 5 years or so. So at about the same time, end of this decade, this could be in full blossoming, and then we need to react to that. This is not just a pressure that we've got to do it, otherwise we are going to lose our own competitiveness. It is also a very big chance for us to address a number of big problems of mankind, the so-called grand challenges. And what those are, that depends who you talk to. For my purposes here, these big and grand challenges that we can address now is population growth, urbanization, aging, environment, food, and natural disasters. There are others, and you can look at it in a different way. You can substitute aging to healthcare and so on. You can do all these things, but there are vital problems everywhere here that we can attack now and we can address now because we have the connectivity in the hyper-connected world. We have the technology foundation. It's not just theoretically existing, it has been deployed in the cloud service capabilities of companies. And we have now the smarts, the algorithms, and we got the data that we can use to analyze and understand all these situations. Some of these hit some countries more than others. Here in Europe, where we live, I'm sure Italy is the same as Germany, we do face an aging problem. Asia doesn't, with the exception of Japan. Japan is even more advanced in this direction, that the problem is bigger in Japan with aging. Environment is certainly a big issue, at least here in Europe, and we can take pride of that. It's interesting for us, and we should develop the technologies and solutions to address that problem. Food is something, and Vito was mentioning agricultural examples, is something that is facing the total of mankind. It's an outrage that on this planet, people are actually starving. That can't be. We've got to solve that problem somehow. And of course, natural disasters are something hitting Japan with regularity, very regrettably. But that has trained the nation. The Japanese face up to the problem and develop technologies, including IT and ICT. And ladies and gentlemen, when the earthquake in the Tohoku region hit on the 11th of March, 2011, within just 18 minutes, Fujitsu's IT operations were in alert mode, and we were starting to take over compute loads of companies whose facilities have been hit by the earthquake. So the emergency team and the emergency failovers started to work. And we lost the factory ourselves. We lost the factory where we were building a Primergy Intel processor-based servers. And we took over the entire production of that server line in 5 working days to our factory in Augsburg, Germany. Now think about it, it's not the production that's the problem. The problem in modern day manufacturing is that there's a supply chain. There are Intel processors traveling to places, there are hard disks, other chipsets, motherboards, and so on. These machines do require parts made in different parts of the world, and there's an incredible supply chain to bring them together for manufacturing and then bring the merchandise directly to customers. That whole thing we could change it within 5 days to take over the production to Germany. So this is an ability that is developing, and Fujitsu is one of the forerunners here to develop it to cope with natural disasters. Now, there's one common element in all this. And of course, I could just take this and view it as a technology problem. And I could always ask, is it aging? What kind of technologies do I need? What do I need to do? What do I need to develop? What kind of robots, personal robots do I need to develop? What kind of communication systems? What kind of hookup? What kind of bandwidth do I need to the home? And so on. I could view everything as a technology problem. And of course, Fujitsu does that. What do you think we spend this $2.5 billion R&D budget per year for? We are asking these questions, where is it where we can contribute using our technologies? But that's not enough. Fujitsu is one of the very few companies in the world who recognize that the common element in all the challenges, and therefore the common element of all the solutions that one can provide, has got to revolve around people. It's got to revolve around individuals. Now, please understand that for a Japanese company, the significance of an individual is a big word. The Japanese society is not about individuals. The Japanese society is about the society, the group, the family, people working, doing together things. So if a Japanese company recognizes that the role of the individual, the human-centric idea is important, that's a big word. There was some real hard thinking behind that. It's a significant step. We believe that the key driver for the future is paying attention to how people use technologies, what do they need technologies for, and how technologies can help them to contribute. That's going to be the key. And if we accept that this is going to happen like that, then this whole human-centric paradigm can be just derived from that. And indeed, we do find in the comparison very different statements now to what we were used to just a couple of years ago. It starts out by replacing efficiency with creativity. I don't know whether this shocks you, but it should, because IT has been arguing for 50 years that IT is about efficiency. We are here to tell you that the new IT will be about creativity. In IT, one can prove it, that it does contribute to efficiency of mankind, because there were people asking these questions. There were serious questions asked about, is there any contribution of information technology to the productivity of mankind, which I equate with efficiency here for a second. Some people thought that there wasn't. Now, it turned out there was a study by the Federal Reserve that there is a couple of low percentage points, but there is a net contribution of IT to the productivity of mankind. I like to say to this, that George Bernard Shaw said once that marriage, and those who are married in the room will be able to relate to this, marriage is the best solution to all the problems it causes. And I would say, in analogy, information technology is the best solution to all the problems it causes. And there is a net. There is 5%, or if you argue with me, then I'll settle for 4% extra that we retain. And that 4% extra has been bringing mankind along this efficiency curve for the last 50 years or so. So efficiency replaced by creativity. There are other things that are replaced like that. There is, for example, the interesting one that the concept to own was important in the past, and now there is a sharing. There is a sharing economy. There are books about this, most of which I didn't understand. But there is this concept, and I understand that sharing is something new. And I understand that sharing of knowledge and information can actually work. Because sharing is a difficult concept if we talk about material things. Like sharing money is very different from sharing knowledge. If you share your money with me, I'm going to have more. You are going to have less. But if I share my knowledge, suppose I have some, if I share my knowledge with you, you're going to have more, but I won't have less. And this is why sharing of knowledge and information could actually create a new economy where sharing is important. Of course, we've got to be able to share, and that has consequences. It's got consequences for the entire workforce. This whole mobility and phones and internet and social media at the workplace, and that some CIOs tried to stop and failed miserably, is about this aspect. You either share or you don't share. You can be selectively sharing. So you either accept that there is value created by that, and then you should let your people in your enterprise do proper sharing, or should just leave it alone. Innovation activities used to be a closed shop process. Closed innovation company inside, everything is protected. Of course it's important to protect. There are crazy, insane litigations and trolls, patent trolls in the United States, and you know how bad it can be if you fight about intellectual property rights. But still, open innovation thrives, partners, customers even contribute to the innovation capability of a company. Fujitsu has an established open innovation process. We've done it by the books, by the rules. Contribution, it's open for contribution. We've got to talk about the legal aspects a little bit, but then the company is keenly interested in what customers need and how we could come to the next level. So this is the pieces, and I don't have time for all of them. These are the pieces that are coming together to build what we call a human-centric intelligent society, and I'll be explaining a bit more about it. I think the intelligent part of the society is maybe not the difficult concept. The more difficult part of it is this human-centric. And essentially, we believe that through ICT, information and communication technologies, the two are coming together. You see, we have a number of convergences in the industry today. You know, it starts small, where different communications protocols converge. It becomes bigger when the storage systems and the networking systems converge. It becomes even bigger when the servers converge with storage, and it's the same system essentially now. And we can go on and on like that. Technologies are converging. But also business models and processes are converging. And we saw how processes replace products, and how it's not meaningful to manufacture a product and deploy it and leave it alone because maintenance is an issue, and how maybe it is more intelligent to do life cycle management on the product and not sell it at all, just lease it or rent it for a while that you are using. So even on that level, there is a lot of convergence going on. And with all these convergences, we are becoming more capable of addressing this big challenge of social innovation and business innovation. A big part of it is social. A big part of it is social because when we talk about the Internet of Things and about the sensors, we tend to forget that these sensors are not just physical objects that measure certain physical parameters and submit it. Sensors exist in the social networks as well. You can listen to Twitter feeds and use it as a sensor for something. We've done a project like that in Japan. In Japan, sometimes we have the problem that there are flash floods. There's heavy rain coming down, and depending on many things, you know, how long it did not rain, and what kind of soil we have, and where we are in a big city or not, a given amount of rain can actually lead to flash floods. These are when water levels are rising like crazy, like within 10 minutes, 2 meters and higher. And that just now you can do physical sensors and place them around, you know, everywhere, and measure levels and humidity and figure out weather reports. You can do all of that, but it turns out it's not accurate enough unless you add a very particular kind of sensor, which is measuring the sentiment on Twitter feeds. And if you find that in the particular area that you're interested in, the feeds are such that people are panicking or saying, I do have a problem, and this is incredibly fast. You can even look at the language, how strong it is, and analyze that and feed that information in addition to the physical parameters that you are measuring. You can be much quicker and much more accurate. The Fujitsu system is capable of predicting flash floods in Japan 5 hours before traditional systems can do that. Now, in 5 hours, you can do a lot. You can't stop it. But you can remove people from the area. They have enough time to take some valuables with them. 5 hours is a long time to react. So this is just an example of how social and business are coming together and converging as well. And with that, we are just witnessing, and in the case of Fujitsu, we are actively managing and creating a new way to innovation. And that's a good thing, because innovation is going to be a lot more important than it used to be. You see, those of you who are in IT operations, of course you are beaten up every year when the budget discussions come around to save cost, but it's not quite like it used to be. Because the primary objective of cost, look at this, is in the third place. And sometimes it's in the fourth place. It used to be the first and nothing much after that. So in the new economy at the current time of speaking, of course, these things do happen, they come in cycles and stuff. But currently, what we face here in Europe for sure is a changing business priority. Most, time, money, and effort is spent on growth. We realize that we need to grow. And that is only possible, in particular, in mature economies such as ours here in Italy or in Germany or the whole of Europe, if you innovate. Now, we think that there are 3 dimensions to innovation. Let's start at the bottom. The infrastructure is important. We all know that, and I argue that mankind has created quite a decent infrastructure, and it's not just the analog infrastructure, it's the digital infrastructure as well, the cloud computing capabilities and all the deployment all coming together and providing a new kind of infrastructure. But upon that, we've got to create a creative intelligence layer. The infrastructure will provide us enough data. In fact, you see in Vito's boxes. What do I mean by enough data? We're going to be drowning in data. So that's not going to be the problem. The problem is going to be the creative intelligence part. What do we do with that? And the very Fujitsu unique addition to this, because these 2 you find in other companies' presentations and deliberations about the future, but the very Fujitsu unique part is the human empowerment that we think is important at the top. 1 sentence about each. The human empowerment can only happen if the individual feels that he's got the right and the opportunity and the technical support to contribute. Now, in your company, whether they have the right or not, that's your business. Whether they have the opportunity or not, that's your business. But it is our business to create the technical foundation and the infrastructure to go with that so that they can indeed contribute. So every individual, whether the company is small or large, every individual, whether the country is small or large, should be able to contribute to advances of business and society. The creative intelligence part is something that I have been making enormous progress lately, because I believe that we have a very unique point in the development of mankind in that we have enough data about the past, amassed about the past and stored. We are getting a lot, actually a lot more data about the present, which is the sensors. And we are now capable of producing data about the future. I know this is difficult to accept because you would argue that there's no data about the future. Well, it depends on what you think data is. If I take a supercomputer and I have a proper mathematical modeling and I can rebuild the human heart as a mathematical model running on the Fujitsu K computer, which is a supercomputer, and can predict failures of it, is that data about the future? It might be. It's not just because of my past. I'm a theoretical physicist by training. I used to do computer simulations like 25 years ago. So this is very dear to my heart. I claim, and I'm adamant about this, that with the proper algorithms, mathematical modeling in the business world, business analytics is the word that we use, and the supercomputing facility, we can provide data about the future. That data has a certain probability attached to it, but scientists can work with probability. That's not such a big problem. And if you accept this, then what we have is data about the past, storage, data about the present, sensors, and data about the future, supercomputing and mathematical modeling. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, what we have is something we had not have as mankind ever, and that's a context. We can figure out about anything if something is happening, what else is happening on the planet Earth, or maybe even on a larger scale, at the same time. At the same time. And if we are smart about it, then we can, so not just say, what happened, where did it happen, and when did it happen. We also can say with a certain probability, we can say why did it happen. That's a context. And this is what will drive creative intelligence forward. And I did talk about the connected infrastructure. The short version of it is it does exist already. It just needs to be used. And with that connected infrastructure, we have something that we never had before either. IT, ladies and gentlemen, is not a roadblocker anymore. Remember the old days? If somebody came about in a company, well, let's take agriculture because that's insane. There are so shocking examples in agriculture that it's very easy to talk about it. We have a project in Japan in agriculture that uses sensors of all kinds, not just the ones attached to the cows, but also the ones attached to the environment. And with that sort of capability, that kind of information and historical information and some modeling that we do, what we do is a mating service for cows. We figure out which bull with which cow and when. Now you could say, well, this is insane. Well, you know what? It helps a lot to improve the efficiency of that particular cow breeding in particular parts in Japan. And as you know, some parts of Japan, like the Kobe region, very expensive meat that's being produced there. So this is very, very significant what we talk about here. So if you wanted to do anything about it, how did it go just a couple of years ago? How did it work? Well, the project got approved. The CEO thought that, or whoever runs the company thought that this is a good idea, and they gave it to IT. And IT went away and came back a year later because they had to purchase the servers, they had to purchase the storage systems, hook up the networks, configure the stuff, acquire software, write some software. It just took forever. So even though we as an industry were proud of saying that IT is a business enabler, these were the sentences we were using. In reality, many times IT was a business inhibitor, or at least innovation inhibitor. Now, if an IT project doesn't shape up for any crazy new idea within a month, they need to be fired. Because it's possible. The infrastructure is there, the cloud computing facilities are there, almost everything there, and can be had without capital expenses. You can rent it from the cloud. And with that, the connected infrastructure has become a very powerful weapon. So let me just mention a number of customer cases. This is not science fiction. This is not something that might happen or it will happen in 10 years from now. This is as we speak. We work with both aircraft companies, actually, both Boeing and Airbus here in Europe, and we do what is called automatic identification technology, which is essentially tagging of all parts that are used in these aircrafts and recognizing them using RFID and similar technologies, looking at their history and measuring the environment parameters in the aircraft and doing predictive maintenance on it. Predictive maintenance. The problem is not that something needs maintenance. The problem is that it needs maintenance at a time when you didn't plan for it. Predictive maintenance prevents that. You can do predictive maintenance at the time, or maintenance at the time when you think it's okay, when it fits to your business processes and such. And by the way, you can do it in about a couple of seconds. To figure out what's wrong in a cabin of such an airline, it takes one guy with one device in his hand. He walks up and down the aisle and comes back, and he's got the reading of everything on board that is an instrument, is a device or anything of that kind, signaling whether they need attention or not. So this is why automatic identification technology, I haven't even examined the history, where they come from, who is the manufacturer, what kind of transportation routes have been used, because that all can be used if you find failing parts to figure out what might have happened. Or another case, the Water company, that's a Japanese company who's using augmented or virtual reality using our equipment and our software, which superposes computer-generated information on real-life images. So what this gentleman is doing here is holding a tablet against a piece of mechanical equipment, and on that tablet, well, first of all, using a proper image processing, it will be recognized what kind of machinery that is, what version, and then so on. All databases will be, asked about maintenance schedules, what happened at what time, and then very simple instructions appear on the screen what to do. And even if this worker never had experience with that kind of equipment, he doesn't have to leave and somebody else comes back at a different time, and during this time the whole equipment is out of operation. Well, he will get instructions, very simple, on the screen, following augmented reality superposition on real-life images, and therefore making this maintenance that I talked about very much simpler. And then there is, of course, this very famous Akisai project that we do, and there are many shapes and forms of using IT in the agriculture. And we like to do this because IT penetration in the agriculture is very low, and therefore anything you do demands and deserves and gets a lot of attention. So we like to do this, but it's useful too. It is rather easy to improve the quality or the quantity of the crop by figuring out on what day it needs to be taken in. And that applies to rice fields, such as wheat fields. That's what we do in the United States. And we don't have a running project, but this is my pet project, and I'm dying to do it one day. You can even use it to improve the quality of German wine, a rather expensive white wine, a very good one. There's this late vintage wines the Germans have. They don't take them in till November or something. The first frosts come in a very small quantity. But you've got to figure out the day, because if you leave it just 2 days longer, you can throw it away, the whole thing, because there's an extra frost that comes or humidity that kills the whole thing. So there's an enormous risk involved. You're getting more money if you keep it out, but then you've got to find the right day. Now that is a marvelous project that we can do with the sensors, with tapping into the geosatellite data, figuring out how the weather is going to be looking like by taking the proper measurements for it, doing a proper modeling of the weather models, looking into historical data, measuring the chlorophyll content of the leaves and the reflection of sun rays from the soil, and a number of other things. And from this multitude of sources, you can bring together the information, and if you are smart about it and have got the right algorithms, you can determine not just the day, but you can tell them that it's going to be tomorrow morning from 10 to 12. Hurry up. So that's a way of putting that kind of technology into good use in some areas such as agriculture. And again, let me repeat this. You don't have to build the infrastructure to do this, because it has been built. The geosatellites are out there. The weather data about the past are available in the databases. The mathematical modeling is running on servers. And if you have your own, you can run it on the cloud. And you can combine all these sources it's just a matter of days. Again, if that kind of a project is not set up in less than a month, the whole IT staff needs to get fired. I'm serious. So, in closing, this is what's happening and how we view it. And let me just, in summary, tell you what we think we can do for you in all this development, you see. This human-centric innovation with the elements of infrastructure, and then connected infrastructure, the creative intelligence, and at the top, the human empowerment are the three dimensions of the problem. And I would say that what Fujitsu does for you is we bind these dimensions together. That is unique. Lots of companies are concerned about infrastructure and so on, but in this depth, with the three dimensions and with the human element in it, the human-centric innovation in it, that's unique to Fujitsu. I'm going to skip this slide since Federico used it. And let me re-emphasize that by and large, the foundation for this is the infrastructure of ICT that we have created, and that's a cloud computing platform. And he just announced that Italy is going to be next on our list, and we are extending these capabilities to everywhere so that our customers can innovate in their own businesses. The values that we provide is integration and the big portfolio that was mentioned. You see, that's not always a good thing because it costs a lot of money to develop all these things. But for Fujitsu, there is no other way because we have determined for ourselves that our value to you is that if it's about ICT, Fujitsu should be able to help. And for that, we do just simply everything that's required. And with that everything that's required, in closing words, I'd like to say that don't you believe any company that comes to you and says that, let me innovate for you. It ain't gonna happen, ladies and gentlemen. That doesn't work like that. The business innovation part is with you, and nobody can take the burden off your shoulders. You've got to know your business. You've got to have the business ideas, and you've got to have a plan for the digital penetration or digital transformation, how it will change your business into something new. And if you don't know yet how that can happen, I have only this much to say. You either haven't thought long about it or deep about it. Think about it. We can contribute via technology and services. And if we put the two together, the business innovation part that must come from you, and the technology and service innovation part that must come from us, then we can be successful. How this works has been written down in a paper called the Fujitsu Technology and Service Vision. Please have a look at it, read it, because this is how we think that society, business, and technology will progress. And with that together, we have a roadmap, a plan how to build the human-centric, intelligent society. And you see, the intelligent society part of it is maybe easier to understand, as I said already. That society is intelligent because it's automated, it's full of sensors, it's full of infrastructure, it's sustainable, it's efficient, easy to handle. In that society, most of the work is done by machines, robots, devices of all kinds, by the Internet of Things. So the work is done by the machines, but it is done for us, the people. By machines, for the people. Human-centric, intelligent society. Mille grazie.